So about ready to start playing Aspern Essling. Explained a lot in the intro part. Usually I jump right into play, but it took so much that I figured, screw it, let's load it up. I can't be sure when I'm going to get up, how much play I'm going to get, in part because I'm playing my second account of Shadow Rage Legends to just, boost capabilities. So the what I went over there is the French are basically in the defensive here, holding a bridgehead, and Charles and the Austrians are coming in to drive them back, sort of the standard cordon type tactic from empires in arms. And Napoleon's kind of not expecting to be attacked here, but he's in pretty good defensive terrain. I haven't written any orders down yet. They're fixed orders at the beginning of play for this. These guys, I don't know what the hell. I don't know what's up with them. They don't have any orders as far as I can tell. Well, everything that's on the board is specified as either being in no orders or defensive orders at the player's discretion. For the French, I'm essentially throwing everything into defensive orders. They want to hold their position. However, let's see. Well, Massena's at the court level, so Legrand can come up and help defend there. These guys are going to be sitting in no orders if they have to be. They don't appear to actually be a command. They're like part of 6th Corps, just kicking around there. And they'll get absorbed into 6th Corps when it comes on. I'll write the orders for units as they come in, but I just don't feel like writing down, using up a bunch of lines to write down default defense. It seems kind of pointless. Seeing problems with this situation. I'm just sort of farming over on this. It's an initial account. It has huge amounts of energy and everything, and I don't feel like playing out the efforts. I barely play out the efforts in general, but I've gotten to a point where I got to go do something, and I'm, in the middle of a turn, I just, wrote the initial orders for 6th Corps that's coming in, or whatever it is, columns, corps, who knows, and I'm about ready to start, and now I got to deal with something. So I may end up having more troubles than usual, just because of what I'm doing. But I'm really trying to make use of wasted time while I'm playing the computer game. Very first turn of the game, I get a random event. I don't know if you're supposed to roll them on the first turn, but I did. And it went to the game table, and it ended up Archducal Confidence, which means for 1 victory point, I think it is, I can throw away a rule that I need to find it. Unfortunately, because this isn't a regular rule book, I need both hands. It's only 1 victory point, and so this represents something that historically happened, the loss of confidence, Charles giving up the attack and falling back. But given the total cost of that, not only does it break their initiative, which they may choose to do anyhow, but much worse, it's going to throw these straggler results in that I think probably shouldn't really apply. So let's see, this is my sequence of play. I got to get someplace to write a note. I may just put it at the top of the thing, but that's gone, and the French are going to get an extra victory point at the end of the game because Charles is more confident. That doesn't tell you anything about victory in the game, victory in the battle. All it tells you about is who won the most points in the game. Just a significant difference between the new rules and what I'm used to from CWB and presumably NBS. Forced march is a specialty under road movement. It's only allowed during road movement, apparently. This is a big difference because, and I'm not sure I like it, and I may disregard this, because under this system, in order to close combat, sometimes you have to push units a little harder and take one or two force march sets. Well, here, you know, that's the primary use I had for it, is to help me close the gap and get under, you know, avoid opportunity fire from hitting me too many times, or something along those lines. Because, well, I mean, you could place yourself some distance away, but if there's any kind of terrain or whatever in the way, this was very, very helpful towards launching a charge. You still had to undergo opportunity fire, but also sometimes it allowed a unit that had become kind of spread out a little bit to slam together and coordinate an attack. I'm really not sure how I feel about this. Certainly during Austerlitz, I was using force marches to launch a couple of attacks. The only times I used force march. But if it's limited to road movement, and I was looking up road movement to see, hey, is there anything special about road movement, or is it just you get to use the road movement, the road rates? It's you just get to use the road rates, and you get free facing changes. Whew. I feel like I have to look that up. This is getting kind of disconcerting, though, trying to play this while I watch over the computer game. My poor little brain is having trouble with all of that. I probably was misunderstanding all along, because I looked at the all the way back to the version 1 rolls, and it's limited to something called road column. Now, road column doesn't mean that you have to stay on the road the way this does. So it's slightly more forgiving, but you don't want to launch an attack from road column. You get no fire combat capability, and you'd have huge morale penalties. So yeah, no force march. Now I'm wondering if CWB has the same rules. But yeah, you have to deploy into a combat formation. So I'm certainly going to stick with the rules as written in this case, and just write it off to I was misplaying previously. But that means I will almost never force march, because, you know, unless I'm really have to get some units across the board, the idea of using a forced march to get a little extra oomph to get your guys to the line is one thing. It's another thing just to march them, you know, back and forth across locations. Certainly on a map this small, it's really unlikely. There's some big movements that may make sense in Austerlitz or something. Primarily because recovery. So, like in Viva la Emperor, recovering from straggler losses can be done sometimes at a better rate than losing them, so that the extra movement can get you some extra spaces that you kind of don't have to pay something for. But usually it's not that important to get something in the line that fast. I mean, there'll be cases. So here comes the Austrian column. Nothing too exciting there. For the French side, I've got to position really this Legrand unit. Everything else is probably okay. Let me shift around a little bit here regarding the granary. Maybe extend the line into there or something. I'm a little worried about that. But all the Austrian units right now, and France doesn't know this, well, they do if they read the rules, have orders to attack Aspern to capture it. They're not at all interested in Essling at this point. So, you know, it's just going to be a focused attack, a couple of corps. I don't know. What do we got here? 2nd and 6th Corps are going to be combining for that. And 2nd comes in back here, I guess. Well, this is 1st Corps. Do they have orders? 1st Corps, 2nd Corps, and 6th Corps. So 3 corps. So yeah, 2nd Corps is way up here. So yeah, I guess it's going to be sort of an echelon attack, by which I mean piecemeal. Turn was relatively trivial, like I said. Everything can't be set up quite how you want it for the defense, but you have plenty of time, just because the setup orders are kind of weird. I don't know what they're trying to capture here. Maybe some idea that the French were still kind of forming up their defenses or something, but there's just no chance whatsoever that the Austrians can reach you, even with these lead units. I mean, I guess they could do a cav charge or something if you do something really dumb, but not into a village. So now comes the tricky part. You know, most of these games, the terrain's kind of normal. You're not facing this sort of siege type situation. This is, well, it's more like an assault, but this is a seriously tough piece of ground to take. And I mean, as the Austrians, Charles may be convinced that he has his conviction of success in front of him here, but I sure don't. I'm like, I don't want to attack that. And here's what's really problematic. If you count the victory points, let's see, 3 for the French there, 4, 5, 6. It uses the same kind of victory point system Marengo did. 7, 8. Okay. To 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, there's no reason for the French to leave these entrenchments. There's no reason that the French would counterattack as they do on the second day, trying to win the game, right? They're gonna, you know, historically they caused greater losses by defending. They hurt the Austrians a lot more. They could have just stood here and said it's a defensive victory. If they had not launched their attack, they would have won the game. This gives you the kind of situation that feels a little bit like when you look at the North Africa campaign. And this came to mind because on the, what was it? Oh, geez. Maybe the design for effect video. People who you know, when you look at North Africa campaign designs, most of them seem to give, you know, this sort of, well, you get an automatic victory if you hold Alexandria, but after that, you get victory points, you know, assuming you don't get Alexandria with Rommel. The Axis victory points are based on, and I'm not really talking, you know, as a pro-Axis when I say you. I'm just thinking, I always think in the terms of the attacker, I guess. I don't know, maybe not. But the Axis is, you know, their goal is Alexandria. That's written into the rules. But then their secondary goal is hold on to as much of North Africa as you can. Well, if you look, and this is the Desert Fox Trail of the Fox combination problem, but also Africa, I would assume DAC, that's too simplistic a victory condition set. Because, especially in Africa, where Alexandria is impossible, you can't get it. I mean, you literally cannot. There's just, you can look at it and see it is impossible to get. The only way you can get it is if the Commonwealth just fucks up completely. Like they do something completely idiotic. They can hold it with almost nothing. And I don't know if DAC's the same way. But if that's the case, then you don't aim for it. You aim for how far can you go, build your line, and hold it. You know, and don't try to push. I'm trying to remember which one. I can't remember. You know, I played the campaign so many times, studied it before that, but I don't remember the names of things. Well, El Alamein is clearly, the one I want to go with here. Yeah, if you can break once you get to that El Alamein position, you never launch another attack. You know you can't do any better than you've gotten. And now you solidify, and now you build your defenses. And that's close enough to the historical situation, depending on the level of abstraction you're looking at, that you can get away with it. But once you get to that, the more detailed games, and I would say Desert Fox is one of them, Africa is one of them, that's not good enough. First of all, a lot of, God, there's fucking people in the park. A lot of the, and it's too hot for me to keep the window shut. I'm not going to be able to play with that shit. Cackling hens. A lot of the casualties and damage that the Panzer Army did to itself was right there. Trying to get beyond that, when there is absolutely no reason to get beyond that. And here we're in the same position. The French historically lost the battle doing something that, to win the game, they don't need to do. They just don't need to do. All they need to do is hold this bridgehead. And that may be accurate, like from a strategic point of view, holding the bridgehead, waiting until the rest of the army came up, that may be enough. That the early attack was just straight out a mistake. But are you really fighting Aspern anymore? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like if the French can win the game by not attacking, you're playing a what if at that point. Because Napoleon felt that he had Charles defeated, and he wanted to complete that defeat, and he took a little bit of a risk. Now, you could bake some of that into the scenario through the historical random events. It's also possible to bake it in through something that the old CWB series seemed to have, but I haven't seen. It never really was developed properly, which was this idea of the overall commander's profile, which would force them into certain actions. Or you could do it, and you could do the same with the North Africa campaign, with kind of something like Unconditional Surrender has. And games have had this before, a few here and there, which is this idea of you have to reach a certain high water mark, and part of your victory conditions is based on that high water mark, and that high water mark is well beyond the boundaries of Aspern Essling. But that might actually encourage weird shit like charging out of Aspern at the beginning of the game, grab your high water mark and fall back early. I don't know. Something like that kind of works better in the World War II Grand Strategic. I think it would work in North Africa. I don't know if you could do something like that here. Anyway, I'm going to go play some video game because I got hens in my backyard, it seems. So, in some games, I can be convinced into a frontal assault, but this just seems so idiotic. Unfortunately, the French have put their cannon over to this side, but I'm thinking about trying to cut through here, this marshy terrain, which I can't get my cav through there. I'm not really going to be able to swing through that. This is just normal forest. I'm not going to be able to swing behind it and get any kind of great advantage, I think. But there's a gap here, and I'd like to take advantage of that. So even though his guns are placed there, those guns are limited. There's only one gun point firing out of the village in each case. It might make sense to pull out of the village, but just to get the extra firepower from the artillery, I don't know. But yeah, I think I'm gonna try to flank a little bit there. The other option would be to come in more from this side, but Essling is sort of anchoring that. There's a cannon there. Another one over here. I don't feel like I can go too far over, but here, the edge of Aspern is really the flank. Start to get within range of some of the French artillery. Again, only one gun can fire out of each. The heavy gun can fire out to range 9. So I'm getting into range. The French are going to be able to shoot. Would they? 1, 2, 3. No, they were just screened there. These guys moved forward. They probably shouldn't have. I realized I've been forgetting a primary rule of this scenario, which is I got to roll for the bridges. Theoretically, I should have been rolling for the first turn. It doesn't really tell you when you roll, does it? This is the Stadler Arm Bridge. I'm not interested in that one. I'm interested in this one. Now, I'm interested in the options, not the actual roll, because I'm playing random interventions. At the beginning of each scenario, the French player rolls 1 die and adds 5. This is 5.1 and 5.4. Is that what I'm playing? Oh, boy. I think so. Okay. 5.1 and 5.4. 5.4 is the big one. So I roll a die and add 5. This was last turn. 7. This is the number of turns that the bridge is broken. And we have this little marker. So this started here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I might fix it at the end of that series. And is this what I'm supposed to do? 5.1 is the first day. It starts at 1 p.m. So 5.4 is going to be the whole shebang. So yeah, so that's what we got. And that makes sense. This would be so much easier if it was the bound rule book. I mean, I still have trouble flipping through things one-handed. All right. So we've got the ammo issue. Shit. What's up with the ammo issue? Well, I don't remember. This is reinforcements. This is late. I have to keep the reinforcements open because I have to look them up to see which hex things come in. Ammo shortages. Here it is. Glad I'm not using, half the map, because that's where I can flip my rolls. During the command phase, I assume the French command phase. Roll a die for each command which has been involved in fire. It hasn't happened yet, so there's no ammo shortages yet. Great. This is really painful trying to do this while I'm playing a video game. Well, so I go to my fire. The light gun, I'm sorry, neither gun reaches beyond 4 hexes. The light gun reaches only 3 hexes, so we've got no fire. So it is indeed going to be the French turn. Okay. Yeah, the extra range is over here. Okay, and that means I can run away and go play my game. And I really don't know if I can do this multitasking. And, you're asking, I can't give up my addiction. I thought I might be cresting the fever a little while ago, but this would have been so much easier if I hadn't been convinced by this damn guy who's like, gives tips on how to play the game, and basically said you absolutely must get friends in scare quotes or whatever to I don't know why they're called scare quotes. They're meant to indicate the word doesn't mean what it should mean. But to get your friends to, to get up to level 50 or whatever, which means, and the way he said it, and then at the end of the video he shows you how to get the game running on BlueStacks so that you can, have multiple accounts running at the same time and conceivably have bots on them all and all kind of shit like that. It's like, there are actually advantages to running it on BlueStacks if it worked, but I couldn't get it to work, which are that he may have a newer version or an older version or something, because I've had problems with another application on BlueStacks. But the advantage is you actually get additional bonuses for playing this on your phone or on a mobile device, an Android or an iOS. And, well, gosh. Anyway. The disadvantage of it is it eats up your assets. I mean, running any kind of VM does, and I'm having trouble running my BlueStacks now on my main machine, and also I can't really play the game in two places at the same time when I'm doing that. If I brought this computer downstairs, I could do it. Except that I would need another Ethernet cable or a splitter or something, because I don't have two cables that long. And I may have a splitter kicking around somewhere. Or I could bring my other computer up here, but this is a lot less comfortable for me to just kind of relax and be doing a couple of things on the computer at the same time. I'd also have to set up new table space in my tiny little bedroom and all kind of stuff like that if I was doing it down there. So I just don't know, But the fact that I need to be playing it, or have been convinced that I need to be playing it on another account at the same time, and that's going to be for a long time, because it takes at least a week to get up to level 50 with like each character. And you want to do it many times, because, well, at least 3. But yeah, you do it in sets of 3, and each one that gets converted does good stuff for you. Plus, I'm enjoying playing from the beginning again. That, like, not making some of the mistakes that I made. But it does really interfere with anything else I want to do in my life. Beautiful weather outside, sort of, kind of. I do not, but it's not like I would have anyhow. But part of me is like, you should be going down to the river, you should be playing, But without someone to do that with, if I'm on my own, all I want to do is curl up in my ball of my house. It's very, very hard to get me moving otherwise. With my wife, I could convince myself to try to convince her to do something, because I knew it was unhealthy, But I don't care that it's unhealthy for me. For the French on the defensive without anything that they're supposed to do, unless I break up my positioning completely, I can't think of anything I want Napoleon to order. And he's got, a lot of flexibility. He's got 2 aides de camp he can order around. But it feels to me like, hey, I can't give up Essling. Doing so, if I move out of Essling, I don't know, something bad happens, I guess. I don't know what, because the Austrians, only have this one force. But things are kind of sparse here. I'm a little worried about attack here. I'm a little worried about coming around the edge, because, I'm one person and I know what the Austrians are planning on doing behind my mind. But this doesn't look as pleasant. But I just don't have anything that I can throw in the way in either case. without weakening my position, somewhere else that's of importance. And Charles could throw out orders. Charles is not very well rated in this. None of the leaders are. Probably Charles is only a 2, which isn't terrible, but it's about average competent is basically how I see 2s. Although they give you the bonus in rallying and whatnot, as well as anyone else does, which bugs the shit out of me in some ways. Like, if 2 is competent as, a tactical rallying point and whatnot, there really needs to be something better than just competent. And that's what bugs the shit out of me about what they did to the leadership thing. Used to be you'd throw your 4s, and I think there were even 5s in this game, in the series. I don't know in NBS, but you'd throw them in to, win the battle, to make the push, whatever. There really should be 2 different ratings, but they tried to do that with the fighter capability to say, hey, some of these people are okay at following orders, but they're really much, much better at leading, but at directly rallying troops and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I feel like they got rid of something that was part of the flavor and part of what I like about having leadership values. And now it's become basically a binary value for the combat thing. Are you okay or are you not? Anyway, Charles is not rated very well, but neither are his subordinates, mainly because he's really pissed and confused everyone. He's pissed everyone off and confused them, so. So yeah, I don't think there's anything I want to do with the French. So I'm just going to push that over to the Austrian turn again. And maybe I'll go back to reading the Conquistadors over there. Oh, God knows when I'll get a chance to play it because of this, my addiction, but also I'm, like I said, I've agreed to do this sort of playtest video. I've done them before for a guy who does 18xx stuff, and he seemed to like them, but this other one, at least I did put my foot down and said, look, just send me a paper copy of the rolls. And he's going to have the printer do it and everything, I think. I don't know. I'm just like, it's okay if you just print it out. My printer doesn't work, at least not well, and I can't cope with that. But I can cope with something like this as my rule book. I'm fine with that, just as long as it's, I can't deal with electronic. All right, anyway. Here I am babbling and babbling because even though what I need to be doing is going and playing that game for 2 minutes and then coming over and doing this, I just don't feel like I can. He's trying to sneak around that field of fire. Now, the French can turn their battery to cope with this, but for a turn at least, I've gotten, a way out of it. And on the French turn, they're not going to be able to fire either because they have to actually move, which means, remember, the sequence of play, my T, is that you do the phasing fire phase, then movement, then non-phasing fire. So I don't get a chance to fire after I move until the Austrian turn. At that point, I'm not going to get opportunity fire because it's too distant. Gotta go. Perform a little bit of a shift, moving unit over here, Legrand over in this direction, turning this cannon. I can't really move that cannon into play, but that's okay. So I could start the process of facing both my cannons into the swamp. The problem with that is the Austrians could spin on a dime and attack, cutting across and over. There's nothing in their orders that says they have to do this weird little outflank thing. And, I'd rather try to protect both directions at once, I guess. I don't really know. But Yeah, this is kind of an interesting situation. Kind of want to look at the historical, see what the attack on Aspern started out as, if they describe it. It may just be a head-on slam to the village. Remember, villages are weird in this system. I don't know whether they're defensive advantages or not. Feels kind of like the Great Leaders, Great Battles, or whatever series that Berg made. I think it was called that. He did it for Age of Reason stuff, Marlborough type situation, maybe a little earlier. But but there, it was really hard to figure out, do you want to be in a village or not? And it's very similar here. Much more nuanced than the, so many of the game systems are just like, oh, you get a defense bonus for being in the village. Well, yeah, but there's also a disadvantage to being in, terrain that's broken up, even if it's defensively advantageous for these units that are used to operating as fixed formations. And covering both sides of that is really an interesting concept. But one thing that's making me question is, does Messina really want to be sitting here? Because we could get a core withdrawal because I can't defend him from this direction. About all that is, I have the default defense orders. There's no other kind of defend orders in this game, really. I mean, there's move somewhere and defend, basically. Unlike under the old optional defensive orders, where you could define a perimeter or whatever. And under the default defend orders, this is bolted down. That means I can't decide. My headquarters is exposed. I don't know if you could do this under the normal, under the old defend orders either. But you can't decide, my headquarters is exposed, but I can move it a little bit and defend the terrain object that I've got orders to defend. It just feels a little weird. It feels like the headquarters should be able to move on its own when threatened. Again, though, it's supposed to define something. This is just a peculiar situation where I'm at the end of the line in the flank position, and the headquarters is just potentially exposed in an ugly sort of way. But again, so what would I have to do? I don't know. Napoleon would have to write orders to Messina or initiative. Messina would have to accept them, and then do what? I mean, the orders would basically be, stay where you are. Just that's really all they would be. Just the right to move your headquarters is all that I'd be giving orders for. And again, it seems fucked up. It's one of those, there's some edge areas where this system, and it never really worked. The only way it ever worked is if you kind of took defensive orders under the old system, which was an optional role, and maybe tweaked them a little bit so that you could do a more active defense where the command center was able to move around on its own, because I think it was still supposed to be bolted down. So what has happened different from historical so far? As the Austrians advanced, apparently the French must have sent Morlitz's cav forward to harass those lead elements. That did not happen. Also, I don't think this outflank happened, but it's not clear from the reading here. It really goes from, there was like a low ridge line, which may be this, which kind of obscured the advance. And then they're talking about it's fighting in the city, in the town itself right away. And my feeling is that trying to be tricky and get around where there are no troops is just not what was present there. I'm not so much expecting there to be no defense at all. It's just that and I kind of cheated when I rotated this. The movement allowance of an artillery unit is 6. It costs 3 to limber and 3 to unlimber. So technically, this is still unlimbered, or is still limbered, which is, even worse, right? It's very easy to outflank artillery in this system. I think, but I'm not sure, that the old system may have had some hand-hauling type rules where you could rotate artillery without that happening. That would be essentially the situation that we're seeing. But basically, anything that involved like redeploying the artillery around the behind is just not going to work. So there's a little bit of a defensive advantage to that artillery there. Not a hell of a lot, because it's only 1 gun strength point per. Still, I've got another column coming in this turn, so the Austrians, need to make a decision of where they want their weight to be. And if all their weight's coming down this way, there's a lot more room for the French to defend that. If I pry some of it off to defend the back, then it becomes a question of what do we loosen up, because I would allow a little bit of an enfilade attempt coming through the ditch if, I would allow it no matter what, but if some of these troops are pulled off or whatever, and if I force the town to be too sort of spread apart in terms of defense, not having a dense unit in the town is problematic, if I recall correctly. But I'm not positive about that. I'm trying to remember how it works. Yeah, so actually, no, it kind of doesn't matter. What happens is the attacker makes a check to see if they make it in. And if they fail, then they take a defeat. But if they do make it in, the defender doesn't get a check. They get forced out. So, yeah. Size does matter a little bit on that check, just not a lot. It's more how you use it. My distraction and being away from this system for a little while, I forgot to do something. Not illegal, but I'm going to cheat and fix it. As the Austrians have approached, the French should be throwing out some skirmishers, and I'm going to do that. And the Austrians are also... the reason I noticed it was I was looking up movement rates, and I'm like, wait, skirmisher. Oops, forgot about skirmishers. This is one of the issues, even though I've been playing a fair amount of this, stuff is easy to lose track of with these more complicated systems. And it's one of the things that keeps me really terrified of going back to the OCS. Now I've gone back to it before, but I at least that, or in that case, I'm not going to be, making the same kind of mistake of, well, I was familiar with this, and with the other Napoleonic game that I was playing, the Vive l'Empereur, where skirmishers are flying out and everything. But I'm just not thinking, and of course, the circumstances that I'm playing under is also an issue, as I'm not sure why my game is not loading, so that I can confuse myself even more. Skirmishers they're almost an annoyance. They really don't. They work fine, I think, under this system, but the fact that you would never. I got somebody I got to erase there. You would never actually, engage without unleashing them and whatever. And there's almost no reason not to have them deployed. Although, historically, you wouldn't. Still, in game terms, there's nothing that, creates any advantage to a unit for not having its skirmishers out. The first system, you didn't want your skirmishers out. But you didn't really want them out during combat either. It was kind of, there were reasons not to deploy them because they counted as straggler losses, which doesn't make any sense at all. It's how the units were trained to fight. They shouldn't degrade the unit at all for releasing stragglers, skirmishers, effectively the same thing. But it still feels kind of funny that, like, I don't know, I have to go through this mechanical process. Somehow, I kind of like the base game rules for Viva la Emperor, although I don't play with those, where it's like, yeah, the skirmishers are out there. You can assume they're out there largely, and you deploy them by the units that have them deploying in a particular way. That just gives them some firepower range that goes out a distance. It's sort of a simpler means of doing it, even if it doesn't show the picture quite as well. It has almost the same effect. How things should have looked at the end of the French turn. A little bit of clouds. You want to keep things open for the artillery to keep their lines of fire because they can't fire through the skirmishers. I'm not as worried here, but I would pull back if a threat showed up there. And it's kind of like, why are the skirmishers deployed if there's no threat? I don't know. Life is weird. For the Austrians, I didn't do it. I'm going to do it as I move them. And they've got another column coming in my game says I got to pay attention to it. I noticed with the sheets for Aspern Essling, and I don't remember if these were in the Austerlitz sheets. I would suspect so, but I didn't really notice it. The heavies are marked with a bold face. They're not indicated that way over here. Instead of doing that, they like have things, I don't know, not here, but I don't know where they state it. When they tell you what to remove and whatnot, they put like 4 battery, 2 light fire or something like that. 2 light. I don't know what the F is for. Oh, light foot versus light horse. Here's the position. I'm trying to keep distance so that so the French don't get opportunity fire. An extra opportunity fire as I approach. I could have been 3 hexes away, but I end up there, boom, I get shot. So, you keep your distance from the artillery, it still gets to shoot you. Speaking of which, that's what we're going to do. We have 1 heavy gun point firing at one of these. I'll pick on this one at range 4, which is still accessible. And we just roll a die and we could do a hit on a 1. Why is there was something that has a penalty? Oh, when there's low ammo for the French. Oh, lucky me. Okay, so, and this is the French. So they will be making an ammo check, I believe, for, I don't know if it's at the division level or the corps level, but I got a 1 and a 2 morale hit. The morale hit is going to be dropped to a 1 because it's a quality unit. But I get to make a leader loss check. I shouldn't have rolled the Austrian dice for the 1. They're fine. But yeah, we got a casualty. There's no casualty track in this game. They took them out after Austerlitz, just like they took out a lot of the other bells and whistles. And they started doing this with the CWB games too. They started giving you less and less little things. Now, the casualty track, what's the big deal with it? Yeah, at the end of the game, you're going to have to count the actual casualties because if you're like me, you're not going to get the death numbers right. But it's nice to have an estimate of just how badly you're getting mauled, and there's no visual for that anymore, which I kind of don't like. I'm kind of doing everything slowly, trying to reform to understanding, remembering the system more or less. I put the shaken marker down, but we're at the end of the Austrian turn. So that's going to go away. I'm not in a zone or anything. It's going to be a French turn, and we'll put the dice there to remind me in case I wander away. I've got these thoughts of more food. I'm eating too fucking much, you know. It sucks so bad. I cut my food way down a couple of years back, and have tried to be eating less, not just whenever the hell I want or whatever, and it's just not helping. I'm like, went up to some stupid weight, and you know, now I'm trying to be even more diligent, and it's still not helping. It's just the age thing, you know. The body becomes more efficient at producing fat or something. Stomach doesn't know. I forgot something else. I forgot my skirmisher fire. The French get some skirmisher fire in there. Oh, they got a hit. So that's on infantry. It'll cause M1 and a straggler. That M1 actually does stay. But what I was going to say is, and let me get the straggler down. This is for the light 2-6. They've got them not in numerical order, but in order of appearance. So I draw that in for my skirmisher, or for my straggler. Yeah, the terms are interchangeable in the first version. Okay. I don't get to fire back with the Austrian forces, but I will get to fire very shortly. I shouldn't have gotten that close. I don't know why I did it. Maybe screening and protecting the artillery, I don't know. But it is the command phase. I'm not going to write any orders. Now, you might say, well, why wouldn't you bring these guys over into the fight? Yeah, you know, I mean, there's a temptation to do that because the force is moving down here. And especially since I know what the written orders are to take Aspern, and Charles is going to have a much harder time to swing around and attack Essling, which, you know, may appear actually more valuable, except for one thing. I'd be facing the French cav over there, and I don't have the kind of cav. So they would significantly degrade my position, plus these artillery here. So I'm going to just keep going with the orders I have. But for the French, you know, if I pick up and leave, I could be losing Essling due to, you know, some unlucky situational, you know, rolls, just an initiative or an order that gets through or whatever. And I'd have very little to do with it once I'm engaged with these extra units. But I am in a dangerous position right now. Given the Austrian orders, I don't think they have enough orders to get them back here just to step on this, which would of course capture Essling or Aspern. And you know, you could make that argument that they do, but that feels kind of gamey to me and taking advantage of something that I already feel is a problematic gamey aspect, which is the bolted down situation. So yeah, what I came on to talk about on the video while I burn time on my game and don't get anywhere on it, which is why I came up here, but is that not for this? This is my break between each little mouse click or whatever, because there's time in between. Is that the French have to check for ammunition, and it is at the command level, which in this case is a corps. On a 1 or a 2, I'm going to have an ammo shortage on the entirety of that 4th corps. Yuck. Oops. For that, I'm going to grab a counter out of Austerlitz. They have the ammo shortage counters. I'm just going to slap that down near the command. I have to remind myself of the effects because they're kind of scattered, you know, like under the old system, it was you have your firepower, which just makes sense. And then everything else was contingent on that. To me, that's, you know, less of a black box type solution than what this game provides. And I'm not going to say that this is in any sense designed for effect, but it is an abstraction away from the things that are easy to remember. And that's been my problem all throughout with the version 3 as I approached it again. I don't remember, I don't know. I remember after having played it, a year or two after, thinking, wow, it was really impressive. I don't remember, like I do vaguely remember having some difficulties with it, but memory's a tricky thing and who the hell knows. Anyway, the infantry have a check to stand penalty. Artillery just get a penalty on fire and attack stoppage checks. So, okay. Can I remember that? Probably not. I probably am going to have to look it up every damn turn or something until it eventually gels in my head, but I just have issues with that. But the Austrians get their shots, and what the hell does the village do to fire? And they don't get a shot. Yeah, it was really dumb of me to move within firing range. Little tactical considerations where you have to know how everything kind of interleaves and works with each other that really kind of get me, because I don't know. I don't know if the old system was as troublesome, but here it's like, it's not as fixed in my head, and it's harder to cope with, and I end up making mistakes that I'm not saying I wouldn't make if I was more competent occasionally. And I'm not saying that a commander wouldn't occasionally screw up and get into the wrong position, which is why I generally tend to leave things. But, geez, man, it's just stupid, and there's going to be that level of stupidity at a very high incidence. I would see the same kind of thing when I teach new people Terrible Swift Sword, and I kind of try to warn them the first couple times I saw them doing things, but eventually you just got to let them, cope with it. And here, I just got to let me cope with it. This is the French side. This is the French fire phase. So you get like 2 fire phases in a row with this, essentially. Which is one reason why you need to close combat, right? So the French are going to get their 2 shots again. However, at penalties, not for the skirmisher, but for the artillery, which means I can't possibly cause damage with the artillery. All I can do is shake their morale. Since I'm not tracking artillery in this game, the actual amount of shells fired, they have unlimited rounds, but they fire less of them when the bridge is down. Fire was effective, which means I think I want to plow into that unit with something. Now, there's some issues involved in this, but yeah, I can form up into column and smash into that, or I could attack it in line. Either way, doesn't really matter. The only part is I actually had to take a unit from the front of the line to bring it in because this thing's too small. It's really not capable of handling the attack. Now, unlike the old system, and I know I've said this before in other games of this, I don't resolve the melee immediately. It gets resolved later. That prevents using the infantry as some sort of blitzkrieging type capability where you can just like smack a unit out and then get a flanking attack with another melee and shit like that. It used to be pretty ugly. I had to convert into column though because I was moving through the village. You can't move through the village in line. You disorder if you do that. So, yeah. And, well, we got a penalty on our check to stand because of the ammo, too. Is that the only movement I want to make? Is the stuff focused on here? I think that's the case, which means we go to the non-phasing fire. There shouldn't be any. And we'll hit the close combat, but I got to take care of some stuff. And I don't know how this is working. One thing it's doing is it's making it so that I'm more willing to be up here playing. But, like, even when I wasn't addicted to this particular game, I would come up, I'd play like 1 player turn, and then I'd go downstairs. I'm certainly playing more time, but I'm not really getting much further. counters are screwed up on this, I have to check even right at the beginning of the game, because I don't know if this is an AB. 16 line 3-4, which is over on this page, I guess. It is an AB currently, and I don't know what's left of this after straggling. It is no longer an AB, which means it actually has to check first. And this is the, yeah, you gotta take your counters out and fiddle with them and all kind of crap like that because of the stacks. So, I don't know what I am. Oh, well, maybe I'm not. This is the Light 2-6, which is also, was an AB, but now it's an A. It's C morale. Disordered gives it a -2. Formation doesn't matter. Looks to me like I need a 5 or a 6. I do hold. And now for the French, who I can't remember who they are anymore. 16 line 3-4, we looked them up again. They're a B morale. They're in attack column. I think, yes, no matter what, I think attacking out of a village makes you attack column, even if you don't have the capability. So they sound like a 2. We actually had the skirmisher advantage. Hold on. Skirmisher disadvantage went to the Austrians. They failed, which means we will be going to the attacker 1 tables. And I can't do this on video. I got to do something with my game. But I also, this is just, you know, too complex for me to remember right now. I'll just report back the results, but this isn't going to be good for the Austrians. They're probably going to have a wrecked unit. When the results came out, the Austrians are going to do 2 points of real damage. I have to compare that to what the French do. They do 3, so these values stick. The French are going to take 3 stragglers and a morale back 1, unmodifiable, and not that I had a leader or anything with me, but, and the Austrians are going to take 3 hits with 7 stragglers and a rout. The French take the hex. Now, note, there was, and the Austrians go flung back. They have to route locally to the rear, and they have to be as many hexes away, so they can't kind of curve around where they'd want to go. So now they're running towards the river with no help for it. They were dropped down to a single box, which is pretty nasty. Just, you know, 1 more hit or a straggler or whatever, and they disappear. And then they're gone for like, you know, 5 turns before they can start to try to reform the unit. So it's good that they're a box, I guess. It's hard to tell. As to, oh, there was something else that I want to, oh yeah, so the low ammo doesn't end up having an effect. I still throw out as much firepower and attack with as much elan if I attack. And in this case, since the Austrians had to check morale first, it meant that, like, well, they were in a shaky enough situation that they just fled. I don't know, you know, whatever. That would not have been the case under the old system. Under the old system, and again, there's no low ammo under this new system, except for this scenario, and maybe if they squeeze it into another one from the same rules. But under this system, or this version of the system, the low ammo, well, under the old system, the low ammo would have reduced their firepower, which would have reduced their impact on their close combat. So the majority of the impact from the close combat under the old system was from firepower. And then, if the unit held at the morale check would be made, but it would be made at a big penalty. and the attacker makes, fire is done simultaneously. The attacker makes their morale check at a -6 penalty, which very likely they'll get flung back, unless they're great troops, in good shape and whatever. And if they succeed, then the defender makes a morale check at -4, which this unit wouldn't have been broken yet. So yeah, I mean, it's a very different system in terms of the effects and whatnot. I think it works better, but it is noticeably different. And again, that's something that I wasn't quite sure of until I started looking at it again this time. Before I thought, it's all baked into the charts to give the same kind of results. It's not. It's significantly different. Here, a force that couldn't have exerted a whole lot of firepower didn't have to make a morale check at all and broke the enemy. Just, because, well, the enemy was already disordered. They were going to break. Under either system, they were very likely to break. Actually, under this system, they had a chance of succeeding on a 6. I don't think they'd have a 1 in 6 chance of holding under the old system, assuming the attacker didn't fall apart on the way in. And with that big -6, it's not that impossible to fall apart. Anyway, we hit the sort of mechanical side of the turn, where this goes away because we're no longer in contact with the enemy. And we've, scared that unit away at little cost. On the other hand, we're outside the village now, for whatever that matters. It's going to matter for the guns, except, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to mean. That should be the end of the French turn on to the Austrian. I don't know if I have enough energy to do another turn. One thing I was thinking is, I feel like I'm explaining things maybe more and better because of my distraction. Not sure. It kind of enforces a sort of a focus on what's going on. The building game in Shadow Raids has hit sort of a weird position where it's eating up a ton of time on my normal account again. And I just don't have time to... I'm having a hard time doing anything up here, but I figured I'd get a little bit of a breakaway, and I'm pushing the Austrians forward. Again, trying to position here, setting up here as a second column is coming into play. The concept being, I'm going to do a little bit of artillery bombardment when I get a chance, but the French get to respond first. Of course, they've got some penalties. They're out of ammo, or low ammo. And then, it's funny. I could have used the low ammo rules from this for the situation if units were cut out of supply for the artillery ammo over in Austerlitz, instead of having the firepower, which is what the old system used to do. But yeah, I don't want to just sort of charge willy-nilly forward. I want to be in a position where I've softened them up as much as possible. Unfortunately, I have, I got some infantry in there, cool. And we'll see, we'll see how the defense holds here. But we're definitely putting some pressure on the corner here. During my comment last night about how maybe I'm explaining things better because of the distraction, it's not just the distraction. I was also exceedingly fatigued at that point. And I've noticed something about sort of when my brain slows down a little bit, it becomes a little bit more organized and a little bit easier to follow. I don't jump as much as I tend to. But unfortunately for you all, I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed right now, which means, it's like I'm all amped up all the time again. On the Austrian side of the turn, we recovered here. The fire does almost nothing, you know. First of all, I was out of range of this single gun, and this heavier gun, all it could do is a shaken result, which I would have recovered from. So I shouldn't have even bothered rolling. Recovered our unit there, and I gotta kind of figure out what the hell I'm doing in terms of not just the game. I just wanted to make sure I come up here and get a little bit of playing in, just like before with the system. Of the turn, they fall back into the town, reposition some units to strengthen the wedge, the corner, whatever, and undertook a little bit of opportunity fire, but basically the artillery can't do anything, even at this range. It's, you know, like 4 light guns. We're looking at range 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 to the, 3 out to the skirmishers, which I could have hit, and I tried to. But it's on the 1 column, and then it drops down 1 because of the town, and yeah, not going to soften up that position. Going to have to rely on the bayonets, whatever. But what unlimbering the artillery did is it forces the French back a little bit, gets me into a position where the Austrians will be able to approach the town more safely, I guess. I don't know. Shadow Raids is heavily impacting my ability to play. Mainly because there's an event going on right now, and I've been playing my main account a lot. I'm up here running my secondary while I do this, because why not? I'm getting kind of used to that. And it helps convince me. Mainly I had to pull myself from just sitting in front of it to play this. On the Austrian turn, we got a random event, loose cannon. And it's going to be this command. The French get to write it in order. And basically it's going to be, you know, to fall back towards Stadlau or whatever. And yeah, that's going to screw up the Austrian attack. And then Charles has to get that, what is that, the 1st Corps? 6th Corps, moving again before his 1st Corps ends up running away. Dangerous pressure is relieved, and it's going further than I thought, not to Stadlau, all the way up around Kagran up here. Meanwhile, I've decided my artillery being that far away doesn't do me any good. But I don't want to inch it closer because it'll get knocked out by the French. So I'm waiting the troops coming up. I'll hope to be able to deploy it. I do not like the idea of assaulting this position. This little swerve around seemed kind of impressive, but you know, honestly, I'm still going to have to fight the village, and that just does not look pleasant to me. So it doesn't look like much happened, but I repositioned my troops within the village so that I had more strength right at the corner there. I'm expecting these to just come hurling forward. You know, if they try to do an outflank or move in a different direction, I'll rebalance in a different way. But you know, I got a beat up unit that fought over here, so that's kind of off to the side instead of, I don't want it back here, but I've gotten a greater density. Nothing else much happened. Outside, I went out to get the mail or whatever from yesterday. Oh boy, you know, it's been kind of pleasant and cool, at least all yesterday was. And this morning felt, you know, it was in the 50s, you know, felt pretty good. But I went out there and it was like walking into New Jersey summer. I mean, you know, there's this oppressive density to the air, as if there's some sort of humidity going on. I don't know. And you can tell it's going to be hot. They said it was going to get in the 90s today. But it doesn't feel like this area. It feels more like the East Coast, that sort of humidity and heat, and it just never goes away kind of feeling. It's not that way ever here, but anyway, at least not, I can't think of nights where it stays hot. It's just like all the heat runs away every day. And it takes so long to get warm usually, but it's feeling ugly out there. It's funny, before I moved out west, even in Phoenix, it was okay, except for there was a period during August that was like the rainy month or whatever that felt kind of like this, but worse, because there was dirt floating in the air and big storms and all kind of dust storms and all kind of crap like that. But yeah, I mean, I forget how unpleasant the air on the East Coast is. You know, that was just normal to me. And now it's like, oh my God, how horrible. It was okay in the winter, but the summers were just hideous. I don't like the ranges of the opportunity actions and opportunity fire and everything really interfere with the ability to just sort of push your forces forward and try to enact what you want. Yeah, it's more detail and it's the realistic way to portray these scales, but it starts to get me into the realm where in things like the Battles of Age of Reason, I was having problems, and frankly with the Labatt as well, where when you're getting to a certain amount of opportunity actions and whatnot, you have to be really careful. Oh, I moved this unit, then I moved this, and then like I'm trying to cover and screen as I move forward. Using some skirmishers to screen seems like a good idea. I'm not sure if it is, but Austrian skirmishers don't do a lot, so using them as screen seems reasonable, since that's part of, you know, what they're intended to do. But now I've got my artillery to move forward, and the problem is I can't move into the same hex as my other units. I can't say, oh yeah, I was following behind them. I could have moved them in the stack with those other units. That would have been legitimate, and that would protect them. And so it's like, the fact that I didn't know exactly where everything is going to be at the end is going to interfere with that. Now I'm going to fudge a little bit and allow some protective capability, and I may actually even move up. I don't know. I tend to not take skirmishers as losses when they're present, but that may be exactly what they're there for. So, and that's essentially the same factor as screening. And these infantry that move close enough, well, the fact that they moved into that hex means that they've already, you know, used the opportunity fire for that hex. So if I picked them up on the way, I would be able to position them closer. And, well, I think I'm going to do that. Not only do I get the opportunity fire, but I also get to blast out with my non-phasing fire. Meanwhile, Charles, probably should have done this last turn, is running up to go talk to Hiller. Well, my mistake's been on the Austrian side. I don't know. Seems like it so far. But they're on the attack. It's easier to make mistakes. Yeah, we'll resolve and see what happens. But now I'm in a position where next turn I get to maybe soften up the town with guns right in front of it. The thing, the village is just such a screwy thing because I can't fire full fire out of it, but it does give some defensive benefit. We'll see, because street fighting is what this situation is all about, really. Being so close, the Austrians paid a little bit of a price. A straggler, a couple morale hits. That's gonna make it harder, you know, to bust into the village, obviously. But on the other hand, allows me to unlimber my guns and put them in a position where maybe, because there's just a -1 to the total fire value, maybe I can degrade things there. That doesn't really do a hell of a lot unless I disorder the enemy, though, because it really, remember, it comes down to I make a morale check as the attacker, and if I succeed, I'm in and I take the village, which just feels so weird. It's like The defender doesn't actually have a choice in the matter. If the attacker is persistent enough, is willing to take the attack, willing to actually make the attack, they will get the village. To me, that's a little funky. As we go into the French side of the turn, they're going to have to remember to make a bridge roll, but I may be playing a little bit of my video game without, other than as just interruptions in this. This may actually be the end of my play for the day because it's Friday and I am going to need some sleep very shortly. I got up kind of early in the morning, not stupidly early, but like 9 or whatever, and I'm feeling fatigued because I was up fairly late as usual. I got to do something about stuff like this. I can't cope with the damn barcodes. Games didn't used to have those, and now I have to look because every game. So it's okay that it's better that it's on the bottom than anywhere else because most people store their games up and down, and that's fine. But this particular location, I've got most of my games stored on their side, and I also have it all over the place on my in my other set of games, the more Euro-y type stuff. It's not all Euros. The stuff that I haven't decided is definitely a war game, but there's kind of this weird mixture. So that like games that fit in the middle that aren't clear end up. I'm not sure where the fuck they are anymore. Once upon a time, I had my games all assigned by age and shape of the games, and the war games would go in one place. But things like High Frontier, which I had a hard as fuck time finding, and Imperial Glory that I mentioned before. High Frontier is actually here. It's just got a much smaller box than I thought. There's a box for the expansion. I don't know what happened to that. I've got everything in one box, and it's kind of tightly packed in there. But it's a thinner box than I expected, and that caused me not to find it. Imperial Glory, that I had a hard-ass time finding, is in a much larger box than I expect. And now I can't find it. Oh, fuck. I think it's here. I think. But yeah, you give me weird box shapes, and they don't fit as well in the wargaming world. So yeah, this is weird. Like I've got one of the Twilight Imperiums here and the other one downstairs. What? Well, these flatter, longer boxes make more sense up here. Those huge casket-sized boxes, and yeah, I have invasions in this, don't make as much sense. I don't know what happened. Like, I keep losing Imperial Glory. I keep losing where it is. I don't think it's over there. I think it's got a weird shape and ended up over here. But you can, oh, here it is. Here it is, right? Or is this, yeah, this is it. This looks like it's Blood Royale. Sort of that color and whatever. I think this may be like, maybe the whole thing hasn't been, wasn't completely designed yet or whatever, because there's no side panels or anything, and most of his games have side panels on them in the printing. It's through Game Crafter, so they do what you want, what you ask for. But yeah, it's a lost game because and High Frontier was in the same position again because of the box size. It's just such a weird fucking thing. And then I've got stuff like Root. Why the fuck is Root up here? Right? Isn't that a Euro? I don't know. Wizards, which is definitely not a war game. I've got other fantasy stuff downstairs. The fact that my games are split between two rooms has just caused no end of confusion to me. And then there's things like that, which I don't know what the hell to do with. It should be downstairs. It's like California orange growing. I did a video on that, but just so confusing to me. It's not just normal weather. Fires are happening nearby, and the sky has turned a little bit orange, and there's just a haze over everything. It's beginning to get to the point where it's becoming a little difficult to breathe outside. I got my windows open still, some of them, but at some point, if this continues, they have to all get buttoned up. It gets, a couple of years back, it was really, really bad. To follow my rule of make sure I get at least a turn in every day, even on Saturday or whatever. And here it is, a Saturday, and I'm tired as hell. The attack has just been starting. For the French, well, first I roll for my possible random event, which there isn't one. But now I have to deal with the bridge. And yeah, I know how I do this. So remember, the Austrians aren't aware of the French die roll. And I can try to remember what's going on, but they know they got a bad die roll. And in fact, they know the bridge is fine now as well. They just don't know for how long. Now, you wouldn't necessarily want to use this marker. Trying to remember what these were for. These were actually CWB markers, I think, for one, not for a particular game, but to be used across several, but maybe I'm mistaken. But I found it useful because I play solo. So we're looking at a difference of 7 minus 4 is 3 turns, 1, 2, 3. This is open, and that means the ammo shortages, we can start making checks. Which means on a 1 or a 2, the ammo shortage would go away. And it does. I'm going to keep this. Might have to pull others out, but for there. And now I don't think Napoleon's going to issue any additional commands, so we just, get on with trying to push those Austrians back and get them out of our face. Clumsiness in the big stacks down here. It didn't work well together. On my camera before I handled something I needed to handle, which is to get this inserted into that stack. I took care of all the record keeping on the paper, but forgot to put the counter under. A couple of cannons have been knocked out by the Austrian fire, which, remember, they're able to shoot more into the French cannons. There's a slight defensive advantage to the villages, but having your artillery parked in the villages is not a good thing. I just didn't have any other option for setup, and if I'm defending the village, I kind of have to do it unless I want to throw my forces out in front of the village, which might be reasonable. They're just so... The combination of effects that a village provides in this game are just so weird. You can see both sides are kind of degrading in morale, and that's something I'm not used to in the CWB series, because unless I'm misremembering it or played it completely wrong for forever, the morale hits come off automatically. You don't keep them when you're in contact with the enemy, and that's actually a significant difference, because here, although in a lot of ways you're less engaged at range 1, you're also less able to reform your units. They kind of can disintegrate due to just this low level of fire and be forced back. It's just, there's a lot of weirdness in the differences between the systems, or it really is one system, but especially in version 3, it's changed quite a bit. Oh, my poor brain's not handling this well. The battle has been relatively easy to manage. The turn's pretty light, especially with one big corps running away completely. But things are changing. Charles is bringing more of the Austrian forces onto the board. And this First Corps here is launching assaults all along the line. And that's going to make this particularly painful. I'm not feeling too well. I think a number of reasons. I mean, this is Sunday, and I should have gone shopping, but I had kind of decided not to as of yesterday. Even I got this event in my game, and I've got to kind of balance both accounts and whatnot, and it's just a pain in the ass. Shouldn't be doing it. But for this, I'm feeling kind of dizzy, hungry. I'm often feeling empty and hungry nowadays. But beyond that, I've got this burning in my eyes, and I think it's from the shit from the fires. It's not real bad. Like, it doesn't smell like smoke everywhere and everything, but yeah, I think it's irritating my eyes. Anyway, I'll come back after I launch all those assaults. Oh boy. That effect was kind of mixed. The first Austrian unit plowed in through here, avoiding the entrenchment type situation, and actually succeeded. Got into here, succeeded again, but it was broken, had taken enough morale hits that it routed along with the French. Through here, we had Austrian failures, which it's kind of weird because the unit that succeeded twice wasn't a very good unit, but it got very lucky. And then the Jaegers, who are a morale but a small unit, managed to bust up another unit and cut in. So, the town fighting is definitely getting ugly. That's why this battle was such a bloody mess, was the way the town fighting works is just, it just threw things into it was no longer the tactical superiority that the French had on the field. And yes, Charles's reforms probably meant something, but I think the bigger thing is simply that street-to-street fighting and everything, it took away some of those advantages that the French had, and that's why they got butchered so badly on the assault. And then when they counterattacked, they had their own problems there, involving the bridge and reinforcements not coming and whatever. They're outnumbered here, so it's not that unreasonable. Now, Napoleon supposedly, when people would make fun of the Austrians after this battle, he would say, "You know nothing. You were not at Aspern." That's what they quote in the thing. All I got left is some bookkeeping type stuff, the routes and the rally up here. Oh, this gun gets to rally too. How about that? I'm not entirely sure what the French can do. I feel outmatched. Yeah, I repulsed most of the attack. Got a couple units over here to help cover the line here, but this stuff is all routed, obviously. I'll try to rally it. I can't really commit my other infantry Lance detachment here. The rest of what I have is cav. Now, maybe I can send that cav out and try to disrupt things, but that doesn't really help the situation right here, unless I can get it around the flank there, which I think I'm going to have to try to do. So far, I've kept my cav inside the barriers, which is ahistorical. The French historically went out and engaged right away with the Austrians on their approach. I wasn't expecting to feel this pressured. Now, you know, I drove back. These guys are disordered. They're not useful anymore, right? But there's so many additional troops, and this is just one corps hitting me. There's, you know, 2 more corps coming in this general direction. This doesn't count. It's just cav. And then the advance guard is heading for Essling. Now, I don't necessarily know that as the French, but I don't want to give up the Essling position. But, yeah, I mean, I can see them heading towards me. They're not very big. They're not going to be able to take it. They're more of a distraction than anything else for the French. But they are a sign that you can't just shift everything over. I might be able to, you know, squeeze and cover a little bit more to the left flank there. But I don't have, you know, it's not like I was covering this whole fortified line here. Because whatever orders Bessier has here, I don't know if they're going to allow me to get all the way out there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, I can harass maybe a little, but there's not a whole hell of a lot I can do. Certainly because of the whatever, you know, rules there are conforming to command radiuses. If I were to actually play them correctly, I don't think I could charge bringing one of my commanders with me. Even if they're going to fall back afterwards, I'm going to loosen that up a little bit. So I think I can probably harass the edges around there. But I certainly can't, you know, try to go scooting around and threaten them from the rear or anything. That's going to be too far of a distance. Launch one set of heavies in over here to try to trigger a square, and the Austrians decide to, well, first they defended with their cav, then they decide to receive it in line, and they held, or shaken. It might be a harder decision for the next wave of cav coming. Just launching one squadron after another, or whatever they are in this, to try to break things up and make it so that, you know, I chased one unit away, the artillery here, this unit's disordered, this unit I've shaken, you know, I'm just trying to degrade as much as I can so that I can slow down their advance. But, you know, when I look what's coming, and I look what I've got in reinforcements, it's going to be awfully, awfully tough to hold Aspern. Second pass going at this unit, I decide to form square. I end up disordered anyway. That unit is not knocked out completely, but it's not going to do anything important anymore. So I changed my intentions towards this one. Got it to form square. However, because this thing's still in place, it's blocking my line of sight, so I can't bombard. Ended up blowing and being shaken. That's no big deal. The shaken's going to go away. But now, gotta figure out. This is painful, man. I don't know how to get out of this. I don't think there's an answer. I've got guns here. That's part of the problem. The guns here got cleared out. These guys could move. They'd lose morale for moving within a zone of influence or whatever. So, yeah, don't really want to do that. And I kind of got to face this way for these forces. So I got my asses to these Austrians. And these guys, I can't turn them around and keep my guns. I could limber my guns and turn them around. That might be the best answer because this is no threat. So I think I'll do that, but there's really no good answer to getting out of there. And does facing change trigger opportunity fire? In a lot of games it does, but I don't think it does in this one. I'll look it up. I think so, but it's not mentioned in any of the 4 first triggers. The 5th trigger is after a unit has finished its move in the opportunity fire zone. I think the reason for that rule to be written the way it is, and technically I think you get opportunity fire for anyone within 3 hexes, whether they move or not, if that's the case, but I think that's there for the Oh, I just moved into a hex. No, when a unit enters a hex in the opportunity fire zone. Yeah, wow. I think just sitting there gives opportunity fire. Now that doesn't feel like the point to opportunity fire was to make up for the fact that someone could cross your fire lane or approach you in an ugly fashion. If it just means, yeah, you're just sitting there, that means the defender gets twice as many shots as the attacker in a given turn. In a given half turn or whatever. And that's not terrible because, it switches to the other side. But I don't know if that's what's intended at all. It does not feel like opportunity fire to me if somebody's just fucking sitting there. But then they go with this facing changes, routed units rallying and blown cav never generate opportunity fires. I just don't buy that you generate opportunity fire by doing nothing. So I've got the facing change allowable, which means if I limber the guns and basically give up my fire capability into this hex, which doesn't really matter right now, I can turn and be facing the Austrians. And is that good? I don't know, because they can still hit this unit from the ass. Oh boy. Something I can do. This has to be facing this way. I can get a flank attack on this artillery and get behind this unit. That may be my best answer. So this takes me out of the opportunity fire zone, which is fine at 1. But then I'm moving within zone of influence. This takes me out at 1, 2, 3, and now I can charge those guns. Now they're going to get an opportunity fire out the flank, which is a penalty, but it's also canister, which is an advantage. So this may not be very good. And let me see, because I probably need to do a formation change for all this movement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What? Yeah, because line pace 2. So it would be 1, 2, 3 to change formation, because I can do it here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Can't do it. Can't do it. Well, I'm going to have to think, because, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 1, 2, because I'm in line. Now, if I change formation, that generates an opportunity fire, so I don't want that. What if I just charge the gun straight up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I'll charge them straight up in line formation and see what happens with that. Times when you had to take skirmishers as a loss. Otherwise, I'm wrecked, which would have routed me and forced me out without a melee. I automatically win the melee going against guns on their own, if I recall correctly. That's not here yet. I'm not sure if I have any other movement. I think I don't. So it is here now. Oh, I have those cannons. The fuck am I going to do with those cannons? We gotta get their facing into the corner. Oh shit, I'm just so fucking clumsy nowadays. There are some weirdnesses. If it was limbered artillery, it would not, it would automatically fail its check to stand, which is fine. Unlimbered artillery gets a check to stand, but it can't cause any damage except by its opportunity fire. It failed it's got a penalty as well, so it ran off. One of the difficulties with me going this way is I gave it room to run, but that room to run meant, now that I got it out of there, I moved my artillery out, so I'm trying to get something into place, but now I'm disordered behind the Austrians. That doesn't help me. I can't recover there. Unless zones of influence are only the front, which is quite possible. So the complexity of the interleaving of these rules is causing issues. So zones of influence are only to the front, but it doesn't say in the zones of influence that it interferes with rally, at least not that I saw. I only glimpsed. which meant I had to go look at the rally rules. Rally rules do specify that it's only the zone of influence. It's not being adjacent to the enemy that's the problem. But then, right after seeing that, I noted as I closed the book something about in villages. Well, I had to look that up because maybe these guys can rally because they're in a village standing there. No, it was the restriction that only infantry in line can rally inside a village, which is a problem for the Austrians. Even if they take a village, they don't deploy. They don't have the ability to deploy back into line. The French do. Lots of special little rules everywhere. Right. Geez. I think I forgot the Austrian return fire phase. I don't know if they have a gun here. If they do, they get to fire. Now, after the recovery, the good generals back here are able to recover most of the horse, not this one, most of the infantry, not the one Napoleon stacked with. Napoleon's only rated a 3 in this game. That's good enough to be fine on the rally table, but normally he would be better on the rally table than your general leader. He's not in this one. Well, version 3.0, there is no better commanders. So there's no like, oh, look, it's, the emperor. He really has a huge effect on morale. Nah, they're either okay at it or not. And Napoleon's as good as the average leader, which disturbs me. All right, that's about it for this half turn. And I got to tell you, tiny little engagement here. Granted, big effect. Lots of casualties, whatever, but it's not like some of the units in it are wrecked, or close enough to it that I had to take skirmishers to avoid being wrecked. But the cost to doing a half turn mentally, even with just a little segment of the front fighting, the amount of rules lookups to see the integration of the village and the special and different weapons types and everything, it's still a heavy cost. Even though I've been playing this system, relatively heavily, in the last couple months or whatever. All right, that is probably it for tonight. Just because, I know it's just gonna keep growing in terms of problem until there's no battle anymore, basically. They're recovering overnight, and then that's nice and easy, like it has been, and I've still been going like one turn a day at best. Back to splitting my sleep. I got to bed at a reasonable time, and slept for about 2 hours at most. So, the good news is, all awake and willing to play another half turn or so, and that's fine. I've been forgetting to do core attack stoppage checks. I think there's only been like opportunity for one prior to this, and I made one here, and there's almost no chance of it happening. So I'll just not worry about re-rolling, because if I roll twice, I can't go back in time, so it would just be increasing the chances of the attack stoppage at this point. Screw that. There's almost no chance at this point. The French are a little beaten up. If they were, they have a division broken, I believe. Yeah, Molitor, who is the defense of Aspern, basically. Instead of having to unstack the entire pile to do a melee, a close combat, you probably had to in the old version too, but I did so few of them. Now they're the way to do combat, so it's a much more of the game is spent on those excessive things. But then also, even in fire combat, you have to not only unstack the units you're looking at for skirmishers and artillery and whatnot, but you also have to look at the skirmisher quantity and whatever hexes you might be shooting into, because they cancel each other out. Again, accurate works fine from a conceptual point of view, but in terms of the mechanical aspects and the mental things that you have to juggle in the game, the burden is just so much higher on this one. Burden. Molitor just got hit here by artillery fire, got wounded. He's out of play for the day, but this is a multi-day scenario. I don't think I paid attention to this at Austerlitz. I don't know how much it mattered. I don't know if I'll pay attention to it here. Basically, if it were more than 2 days, it would be more problematic. I used to mark them with like a little W or whatever. But at 1 a.m., you're supposed to check to see if they survive and are well enough to come back into the battle. Again, a little bit of accuracy there, but and more detail than you would normally have. But honestly, it's a 1/3 chance that they do come back, and a 1/3 chance that they die, and a 1/3 chance that you have to keep checking that mixture each day. I don't know how accurate that is. Yes, sometimes commanders got wounded and came back the next day. But I would suspect that a wound that was light enough to come back the next day might be coming back during the same day, like within a couple of turns or whatever. And you could probably just shrug it off and say it doesn't even exist. So I just don't know. But again, you know, the wounding results, etc., those are really kind of a fudge. Anyhow, I really doubt that the numbers come out all that well. It's just a matter of you don't have that many different percentages, you know, to cut through there and decide. But his unit routed because of his wounding, and yeah, it's looking like the French are losing Aspern. Another facet that's again weird. So morale used to be sort of a snowball effect. If you took a morale hit, it weakened your capacity to recover, to resist the next morale effect. Now, not really. There are differences. So the old system didn't worry about you take a morale hit. What it worried about was what was your morale state at the end of a situation. But if you were hit in the rear, that would be an impact. Now here, the only impact is it increases the fire value to be shooting at a column. Doesn't matter that you're shooting at it in the ass. These guys are trying to withdraw from here. They drew some artillery fire. This was the square. And I mean, yes, I could have fired them at him as a square before they made formation change, which would be the same effect. And what happened was they get a morale down 1. But they can ignore it because they're a B morale unit. Now this is kind of weird. Like a disordered unit hit in the rear under the old system would be under significant penalties. Like getting hit in the rear was at least a -4, may have been a -6. And it may not be applicable, right? If you're withdrawing and you take some fire, are you gonna break into a rout? I don't know, maybe not. This may be more accurate. I can't judge that. They're not the same system at all though. Because here, I actually take no impact from it because I'm a B morale unit. Doesn't matter that I'm a disordered unit, not wrecked, I get out of there. For the most part, the First Corps was handcuffed by some of the defensive artillery fire, but Fresnel was able to sneak up from behind inside the city. There were 2 questions. Did I want to spin around and try to defend the town from these units, or do I want to degrade them even further? Since 6th Corps is actually moving now, they got rid of their delay, I think I'm going to be taking the town, you know, with so many different directions. And I want to wipe out what I can of the French forces, and hitting them from the rear is a big advantage. It's changed. Bloodlust is no longer a godlike state. It used to be you were bloodlusted, nothing bad could happen. Like, you could charge the enemy, and unless he killed you, you know, you weren't gonna lose the combat. You weren't gonna break. Now, that's not so under the old close combat rules. That doesn't mean you win the combat, but now it doesn't either. It means it could end up as a firefight. So yeah, I don't know. But now it's just a modifier on your stand roll, and you can break when bloodlusted. It's not a you're not that highly hyped that you simply cannot fail. Again, I don't know how I feel about that. I kind of liked that status of like invulnerability that you had from Bloodlust, but it probably was pushing things a little too much. It's hard to tell though, because there's just so much baked into these charts. But anyway, after routing that unit coming from behind didn't actually matter because I'm attacking into a village. Only I make the morale check. And getting hit from the rear doesn't affect loss tables. But that melted, it was an extended line going into here, so there's nothing to defend those guns. They don't get a shot because it's a follow-up attack. It's not something that they get their opportunity fire during movement, not during, you know, the fact that I'm charging in from their flank or whatever. And did I make my morale check? Yeah, so that's what I was checking. So these are A morale. I don't think I have anything against me except the village. Yeah, I'm going to succeed no matter what because I'm not a wrecked unit. Which means the guns will not necessarily break, but it barely matters. So I got to look up the French guns. Looks like they're C morale. Okay. And they're going to be okay, but they still get the gun loss table. Nothing else. Okay, and then they get out of there. And I want to make sure about that nothing else. They didn't have to check morale. They're being hit in a village. As long as the attacker succeeds, they're fine. They didn't lose guns, though, and these guys are going to rout, and we make it into that hex. The town of Aspern has been cleared. There's still some French units that could try to take up a defense on the outside of the town, or on the outskirts of the town, or whatever. Defending towns is so fucking ugly, though. Like, far worse than defending in the open in this way. You don't have to make a morale check, but and essentially, basically you check second and you lose. You lose the check. The attacker has to make the check and you automatically fail yours if it gets to you. That makes them harder to defend than in the open. And the idea of like anchoring your defense on these two villages with this wall between them, the easiest place to attack is at the village. Is that reasonable? Is it not? I don't know. I'm not heavy enough on Napoleonic warfare to be able to tell you the answer to that. I also know that, like, at Gettysburg, they avoided deploying within the town because it would disrupt their formation too much. But the thing is, Napoleon clearly thought that anchoring on the town made sense, not let's deploy just outside the town, and actually holding the town is considered military objectives throughout the game. Now, you can make arguments. Well, it doesn't make sense to put the objectives out in the middle of nowhere, but normally it's on crossroads or whatever. But, geez, man. Taking the towns back might be easy too, though. I don't know. You can see the French 6th Corps coming back into online. This, what is this thing? 2nd Corps is moving up into position. Those orders are all going to be voided because Aspern's falling. Now, I guess they can still have orders to go move there, but Charles is going to have to come up with some kind of other attacks because most of, what the day was spent on is gone. Now here, this is just hopeless as far as I'm concerned. The advanced guard is just not big enough to take Essling. I have got to get one of these corps moving into place to make that assault. More than that, Essling has additional defenses. It has the Great Garden, which is not a town at all, allows 2 gun points to fire out of it, which is better. And the Granary, which allows none but counts as fortified. I think they both count as fortified. So this is a much hardier defense than the town itself. And the town attacked across through the essentially breastworks is also hard to fight. But this is an unwalled town from the direction that I attacked in. I made no attacks across those breastworks, and therefore not a very defensible position to be in, one that the Austrians were able to subvert very quickly. All right, that's probably it for tonight. It just takes so damn much out of me to play this thing. Okay, so during the French turn, and I did their whole turn, there wasn't much going on. Falling back or moving up and trying to reform a line somewhere around the 4th Corps headquarters. Aspern's gone. I can't hold Aspern. I don't know if this is 2 different victory point hexes or that's what it looks like. I'd have to look it up in the rules, but I'm assuming Aspern is perhaps the most important of the towns, so it has 2 separate single hex victory point control values. The other things are mainly roads coming off the map. That brings something interesting up. Something the game does not cover, which clearly, one of the advantages of soloing or playing with people who don't mind being, historically accurate. So there's all these rules about the supplies coming in this way. Well, if the Austrians happen to seize this, there's no more supply route. And by any reasonable sense, you would say the bridge is essentially cut off by that. Now, the Austrians have won the game if they've done that, probably, because whatever part of Napoleon's forces over here is kind of stuck here, no easy way to cross over, a fairly large army facing them, and whatnot. Now, on the side of that just shouldn't happen, yeah, there's breastworks, fortified positions across here, the streams and whatnot. It really should not happen. But I could see like some kind of dedicated defense to Essling, hoping things come across or whatever, might end up causing some French player to be idiotic about the whole situation. But it is actually bringing some interest towards getting these guns over here. They might actually serve a purpose here. Usually they're just over here trying to keep that side of Essling protected. Not that there's enough force to take Essling coming at it. But yeah, and slipping through the back door, just trying to get someplace where I can, set up a defense, a line so that I don't just get pushed back. But I may have to fall back to behind this woods line or something because there's no defensive terrain here. The only thing is there's the staging off point of the village, which, if the Austrians go in there, maybe the French charge in to try to break them up or whatever. But that's a risky move when you're talking about leaving things this open. Anyway, not playing a lot. I ordered a game online, and it, just everything is fucking getting so hard for me. So my PayPal doesn't really work anymore, at least for most things. And so I had to write a check to order a used game, and I just even that kind of action is beginning to paralyze me, and I've kind of promised myself I'm still able to apply for jobs, still able to do interviews and stuff. That's become kind of the pattern now. But like, yeah, it also took me a while to find an envelope, which didn't help. I may have only had one left. I have a feeling that I gave some to my wife, and I probably ran out, but she may have my box of envelopes, because I know I have a box of them somewhere, or had. But yeah, I've got to do some stuff with the money in Europe, and I'm hoping to take a move on that. But that's a much, much more complicated problem, and I've been putting it off for a year and a half. Yeah, call it, yeah, pretty close to that. And now I have all the documents I need for the next step, but I don't know where the next step can even lead, because I think I think her father's pretty much gotten disgusted with my ability to get anything done, is no longer being helpful. So I don't know. Been more than 24 hours, maybe a couple of days since I've played, and boy, is it hard. The main reason is this addiction, and I had resources enough to compete in this event heavily, but it takes a lot of time, and I'm just, Jesus, I mean, I'm not buying food that I need to buy and stuff like that, which hasn't happened probably in over a decade, probably around 12 years, more than that maybe, I don't know. My brain's not really working when it's under addictive state. I'm hoping to put my foot down and stop it at some point. At least I'm aware, but yeah. So Austrians succeed in all their core attack stoppage, no random events. This artillery still has a field of fire on this gun, but it actually can't do anything, because the fortified terrain of that ditch or whatever, I don't know what the hell it actually is. What do they call it? Flood dike. But it comes out, I've got one fire point. I can't get more than that because there's no masked batteries for the Austrians, I believe, in this one. I seem to think that was present. I've got the wrong rule book there, but the new one incorporates this stuff, and I just want to see the Austrian artillery. Oh boy, I don't know if it's in here. Mass formation. I'll have to look that up. It doesn't really apply here. I've only got one gun deployed right now, but I have not been allowing them to coordinate their fire in mass fire. But I know this is 1809. It's not. It's not when they were under the worst restrictions, and Charles may have fixed this. But yeah, it works out the best I can get as a morale -1, and this happens to be one of the few artillery pieces. It's horse artillery. It has B morale and is immune to whatever morale effects can come from shelling it at this kind of range. It just shrugs them off. It's like, yeah, you're not doing anything. Anyhow, Charles has to get himself somewhere and give some orders, because currently I will be taking Aspern. I can operate under those orders so long as the troops aren't up inside of Aspern and holding it. But beyond that, I have to figure out what I want to do. And I think what I want to do is probably sweep this way, but I got to get somebody moving to threaten this way, so that basically by putting the pressure on this direction, I can force Essling to not be reinforced or whatever. Although the French would be pretty stupid to cut themselves off their supply line. Boy. All right. I was playing this for the French back in the 1805 scenarios, well, and earlier, that I played. Well, no, in the 1805 scenario, Austerlitz, I was forcing the French to be adjacent to each other, but I wasn't worrying about anything else, just stacked or adjacent to each other. That was true in Marengo and the earlier scenarios that I did, but in Austerlitz, they're freed from all restrictions and then on. I don't think that had a hell of a lot of effect, although it did cause me to position guns. But in 1809 for Austria, artillery can fire at the same target hex as long as the firing units are stacked with or adjacent to each other and they belong to the same division. Corps artillery counts as belonging to its own division. That's kind of shitty. And then in 1813, they get rid of the divisional degrees. I would think the corps artillery should be kind of loose, but no. There aren't a lot of divisions that have two batteries associated with them unless you detach. What happens with detachments is a mess. It was always a little iffy, but you know, who's in command of a detachment or whatever, there's no letters, no indicators on detachment counters. They just say detached. And you really should be tracking who that detached artillery is associated with. But again, there's no rules that support that. So, you know, fudge things as you will. Otherwise, I don't know, you'd want to detach all your batteries completely. I don't know if that's legal, but and create guns that like are completely outside command restrictions and can be operated independently. So I don't like that at all. Of course, there were not massed fire restrictions when this game was actually published. However, even in the Talavera and the later ones using the version 3.0 rules, they just have detached markers, just the same as these earlier ones do. And they did not resolve that. And I find that really kind of disturbing. All right, I got to move some pieces or something. Get a half turn in today at least. I don't have a lot of time before I have to jump back on. Oh, God. Okay, and this is the position at the end of the Austrian side of the turn. The second corps massing up doesn't really have anything I can do orders-wise. Dropping into no orders is dangerous, though, so I'm like withholding that option. I may want to just do it because Charles is ready to give orders. So I think, let's see, that's second corps here. We'll drop to a no orders. Because the reason it's dangerous is I can't unlimber my guns and fire under no orders, but it gives me a better chance of getting whatever orders Charles has gone to give them. I can do it because Aspern's captured. I don't remember what the restrictions are. It's like 3 turns under movement or something like that before you can discard orders, and which just feels so lame to me. But here, there's nothing for me to do. Moving into Aspern seems silly, so I'm just gonna plop down and sit there, giving me a better chance of getting orders from Charles. The 1/6 Division is cutting around this way. That was their original plan, more or less, so no problem there. But again, I think that the 6th Corps is going to have to also say, you know what, I don't really have orders either. Wait, where is 1st Corps? What's on the board? I don't know. 1st Corps. Yeah, okay. 6th Corps is cutting around, part of it this way, part of it this way. 1st Corps is what's sitting in Aspern for the most part, although part of 6th Corps is in Aspern trying to get deployed. I'm going to have to give orders to all of these things. And the army, I guess, is bolted down there. It moved on the map. It's not allowed to continue movement. Like, you can't give the army orders to, as far as I understand, move to a hex and then wait a little bit and move forward and everything. You have to run back and give it orders. And then those have to actually be accepted and everything. I'm dragging my feet a little bit with the advanced guard, pushing over to the flank. There's one infantry unit there, and Cav is not going to take Essling. But I don't want to abandon my orders because I'm hoping to get pressure coming in from 2nd Corps cutting across here. And of course, 1st and 6th might be putting pressure to get towards Lobau and cut the bridge. Things look like they're going really well for the Austrians right now in terms of, hey, we took Aspern. That was the main goal here for this first day. But we want to keep pushing because even though it's the main goal, I still have a couple hours left. Well, more than a couple. This still counts as daylight. So call it 3.5 hours or whatever. I could make some significant ground up here and force the French into some bad, some decisions that they don't want to have to make. But if I just park right now and say, yep, took Aspern, that's good, the French will be able to deploy a line centered on Essling and defending the breastworks here. That's not enough to win the game, though. You're going to have to come back and take more territory. And in fact, if we could see the victory point totals here, Aspern is like worth 4 points to the Austrians. Essling is worth 2 to the French. This is worth 3, so that's 5 points to the French. But there are a couple of extraneous points for some of these roads in that direction that the Austrians want to maintain as their supply line or whatever. And another one over here that, would give this sort of a minor victory for the Austrians if they just sit on it. It doesn't feel like that's what Charles would want to do, though. The only reason he would do that is the cautiousness factor, which, again, he got relieved of that. All right. It's weird because, I'm actually feeling what feel like physical withdrawal symptoms, loss of motor capabilities, like fine motor capabilities. My hands aren't reacting properly anymore. It's been like 6 weeks, and the last few days I've really kind of upped my dose. To the point where it's at the kind of dosage it was when I first started playing the game and had tons and tons of points. Maybe more than that because of playing, for a couple days before this event, I was playing on my dummy account or whatever. But it wasn't too serious. But now I'm like just fixated, blowing all my resources trying to. And it's horrible. I have an interview tomorrow, and I feel like, somebody who's on heroin or whatever. Yeah, let me get a little bit more of my hit. I'll be able to be awake for the interview, whatever. Oh, fucking hell, man. Now here at the French side of the 5:30 p.m. turn, the bridge. The bridge is going to be open until night falls, at least. The Austrians know that it's probably open for a while. No random events. I got to figure out what the hell Napoleon can do. Obviously, I can fling myself back with retreats if I so desire, but that'll leave me in a no-order status with issues, and I don't see a real reason for that. But I also don't know what kind of orders I'm going to want to give. Probably involves Napoleon going and talking to whoever his corps commander is here. I'm assuming it's Messina, and sitting with him because where things are right now just is not, this is not a good situation. But I also don't want to launch a counterattack in the condition that that corps is. Well, that was relatively easy. It was deployed in front of the corps headquarters. The army headquarters is under here. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters about it is Napoleon has to run there after he's done talking to Messina. I don't know that he really has much to say, though. This looks like a reasonable setup, to tell you the truth, but might as well be on hand with him and help rally a unit, too. Very shortly, we're going to start getting reinforcements from, what is that, 4th Corps, which is more of Messina's stuff coming in. And some additional cav. I've got a ton of cav sitting around to help guard the flank there. It's not what I'd like. I'd like infantry and artillery along this defensive line, but we'll do what we can. All right, well, that little bit is all that there is for tonight because I've got to work on my second account. On the bright side, I do feel like maybe the fever's going to break soon. Now things are tricky for the Austrians because they took the thing that they fought the hardest for today, historically, Aspern. And they don't have further orders. Charles ran back to his headquarters after giving orders to 2nd Corps back here. 1st and 6th Corps commanders, Hiller and who else? Bellegarde. Yeah. Ran back there as well to converse with him. There's a problem with that. I can't give them both attack orders on the same turn because I simply do not have the points. 2 points gives me 13. Any kind of engage orders that I try to create bring me to 14 points minimum. This is where the old tight method force proposition and maybe the points were a little higher used to allow you to try to put together an attack more hastily than you can currently do. So there's a little less flexibility in the system. And it's problematic here. I probably would have chanced lesser orders counting on the, hey, I'm giving them verbally, to the commanders at the same time in order to try to get things moving because I'm running out of time for the day. You can see the Austrian line is quite sturdy right now. Probably 1st Corps is the more important. That's over here in the city itself, or in the town itself, to press against the actual units. It's going to sort of pin them down and use 6th Corps to try to grab the bridge. If I can get the bridge, I kind of think I win. I mean, not an automatic victory or anything, but that's going to, like I said, that's going to cut supply. At least I'm going to house rule it that way. Charles also probably needs to move his army command because this is not the only place where the fighting's happening. And again, there were, I think, no orders for where the army... Well, wait. Yeah, there were no orders for the headquarters that I see, which there really should be under... Since this is for version 3.0, it was rewritten for them. There should be orders to move the army headquarters somewhere. This cav under Liechtenstein is still floating around out there. It's providing some protective functionality, I guess, because, again, I think they're under no orders, but I don't want to, I don't want to, see, this is the whole problem. These guys, are they under no, these guys have decided it's fine, they're under no orders. Their artillery's not going to do them much good. But these guys, I think I want them under defend orders. 6th Corps I can leave under no orders. I don't see the French trying to march through the woods to deal with that threat. They're gonna have to deal with it if it gets moving. But yeah, with these guys, yeah, I probably want those gun plinks. But I can leave everybody under no orders. If I'm attacked, I get opportunity fire. You know, that'll give me a little bit better chance of getting out of there. What else? Well, the advanced guard has swung over here, which is less defended. Of course, the French are just going to reposition, but there's heavy defensive works, the granary, the Great Garden. I don't want to face those. And meanwhile, the column that's supposed to attack from that direction is just making it onto the scene now. It's supposed to get to Gross-Ensdorf and then make an attack on Essling. That'll come even further behind. So ideally, I would rather not launch an attack this way, but again, cut back under the breastworks. There's not going to be time for that attack to even land as a blow either way. I mean, I don't know. There's a couple turns to get me into the range, so I'd have a couple turns of remaining daylight to fight. I could fight into the night. Night fighting sucks. It's not, I generally try to call things off in evening because it really is hard to, and it should be, it's hard to continue fighting into the night. The attacks just fall apart. But it would get rid of any kind of defensive advantage that comes from the artillery. That's my half turn for today. My reality of the day, well, I had an interview. I think it went really poorly. Not because I was sleepy. I actually was pretty awake for it, but I had some technical issues and then got flustered by a question, which afterwards I realized what was probably meant. And I mean, this is just a pre-screen, but you know, part of the problem is the people who know what they want don't often express it terribly well. Fine. But they're also not on hand. So it's like an HR person doing the screening. So I don't know, you know, the apparent confusion I had at the way they were using a particular term, where I'm like, well, aren't they basically synonymous? And the truth is they are, but it might come across as a general, yeah, this guy seemed a little flaky, whatever, you know, I don't know. We'll see. But I feel like had I been facing someone who knew what they were asking, as opposed to just an HR person, I wouldn't get marked off on it. Like I said, the fever is breaking a little bit, and I think it actually is, because I'm back to kind of the habit I was in before, playing on auto up here, but not having to play constantly on my main account. So, anyway, although I still can't get anything done. I'm without food. Like, I should have gone shopping starting on Sunday, and it's like Thursday now. But yeah, this event has really fucked with my life. And also, I had something planned for the week that I really needed to do. It doesn't take a hell of a lot of time, but I dread it and just couldn't look at the email and try to figure out it has to do with my wife's shit over in Portugal. Okay, so looking at the French situation, boy, I don't know what to do. With the bridge in place, I've got a couple more cav coming on the board, and whatever I chose to do in terms of marking off cav and whatever, I think I did. So this is the more limited historical cav. Massena is holding a line here. I've got one extra unit, I think, here with some skirmishers that I can use to fill in the line. I don't feel like I can give him any better orders than the default defense he's under, to tell you the truth. But my headquarters is kind of exposed over here. I don't know that I necessarily need to guard across the stream. I think I'll pull back there. But I also have to worry about this coming down at the corner there. I don't think the cav is enough to prevent that. The cav may be enough to prevent problems from crossing from here. So I'm kind of going to reposition things a little bit. And then over here, obviously, I have to swing forces to deal with the actual threat. And that's going to be kind of painful, you know. It looked like they were heading down this way, and they swung around. The French turn, the only really exciting thing, we'll get some cav trickling in here, but, and the repositionings, which were not pleasant to do, is we had a little cav duel out here. Now, I was able to plink with one of my guns. The range is really long, but the special rules for this allow an extra hex, but it didn't do anything. It was just a 1-point shot from the heavies. But if they do come around this way, those guns are gonna do some damage. It ended up being a fairly lucky pair of cav attacks for the French. The first one, you know, I mean, equal units now. The French are on the attack, so they force the Austrians to roll first. And it's through this weird kind of like, again, interleaving of choices, but basically the Austrians countercharge, no problem with that, no rolls, nothing, it's fine. But then the French declare that they're going to concentrate on the cav, thereby forcing the Austrians to defend anyway, but without a penalty. But we're talking about a B and an A quality Austrian unit versus a couple of B quality French units, both relatively large size forces. The first one, the French won outright, which there was like a 1 in 6 chance that the B size unit, that the B quality units are going to break. Chances were this wasn't going to do shit, right? You know, it's equivalent cav smacking into each other. Plus, none of it was going to allow me to cause any problems to that infantry line because the countercharges mean I'm doing it too far out, but I'm hoping for something out of it. Still haven't moved these, have I? No, I had to shift them a little bit, I think. But the first one, the French won outright, thereby getting on a pretty good table, but they took almost as many casualties as the Austrians did, which maybe not so hot. And the second one was a draw, but you can get pretty hefty results off the draw, and the French managed to get a massive hit. No leader losses, although both leaders probably took minor wounds. They each got a 10, actually. They probably got in there and dueled each other for a little bit. I don't know. You said, how dare you? But anyway, I'll probably shift these, but that's it for a while at least, because I'm coming on where I have to really pay attention on my game. I lied a little bit. I do have to note one thing. When I cleared up things here, Napoleon and Massena were standing alone somewhere. I wanted to put them with the army or with the corps or something. The corps is an exposed location, but I don't want to write orders to Massena to move that, particularly. I mean, I could. I don't know. But the army headquarters is also now in a very exposed location because the town wasn't supposed to fall, right? It happened so quickly. So Napoleon and Massena have gone to the army. They're going to go tell it, hey, fall back a little bit. But honestly, this is where I don't like the army command has to get orders, because that doesn't really serve any great purpose. They should be able to skedaddle when they're sitting on the front line. But the Corps headquarters as well should probably be able to fall back without, destroying the whole system. But it really does. When you're sitting with either default defend or no orders, and I mean, to some extent I can see with no orders, but default defend, you should be able to fall back. And it's just, certain things having to do with the, hey, here's the central locus of the forces, etc. And I felt like the defend orders actually allowed you to operate a little bit more reasonably. That the idea of the headquarters being about to be captured and it falling back a couple hundred yards and setting up somewhere else. Sometimes, yeah, they might panic, sometimes. But that seems rarer to me than them just repositioning themselves. Whereas seeing it as they overran where the headquarters would have been because it would have fallen back. The entire core collapses or whatever. That just seems wrong. And the old defend orders with their core defense stoppage, which you could change the modifiers on or whatever, allowed for a little bit more flexibility in the defense, and it just worked better. I really wish they had tinkered with those orders to make those defensive order rules, made them the standard in the game, although you ended up writing a whole hell of a lot of orders in those cases. Because it would make up for this silliness of like something being bolted to the ground. You know? But anyway, I always thought those orders were the right way to go, and you know, Dean did not like them. I can tell you that. He might have been kind of intrigued by them, and that's why they got in there initially. But as they got more and more played, he didn't like them at all. But instead of trying to fix them, and fixing them would have actually gotten rid of other flaws that the system has. You know. Sure did for me. You know. Inside of the 6:30 turn, issued some new orders. Nobody's acting yet. These guys still moving forward. The advanced guard, and this is, I feel like they have to pursue their orders. Their orders are impossible. They slammed into Essling, and they slammed right back out real fast and real hard. Unfortunately for them, they ran into a morale unit sitting in the village. That can't be moved. It is physically impossible. But you're not supposed to examine the opponent's stack. But yeah, the close combat table, you need a 1 or higher. If there's nothing going on that's special, and well, actually, it doesn't matter. What mattered is this is a C morale unit and had very low chance of getting in there. But what the morale difference meant is that the Austrians took more casualties than they would have otherwise. Recovered some of the cav. The French will be coming back and harassing them. But, you know, the advance guard can't do this. And if it didn't have orders that were simple, go attack Essling, and yeah, I could drag my feet a little bit or whatever, but not enough, all on its own. If it had orders like I would have written, which probably it actually had, which is, you know, position yourself, demonstrate in front of Essling, whatever, and wait for for a real core to get there and hit it and join in with them. But instead, nah, I had this horrible effect. Because I feel like I have to make some effort at the orders. And yeah, there's only so much foot dragging I can do without cause, right? I had no excuse not to go charging in. And that's what my orders are as far as I'm concerned. I always come in to announce this, but there was a random event for the French. And it had no effect. It was a game table event. Train catches up. If the bridge is up, this result means the French commanders allowed a few wagons with cartridges. This will give them a chance for one command to get its ammo back, but we're fine. If the bridge is down, a commander cautiously restricts his troop. A command randomly chosen now suffers an ammunition shortage. Boy, that would kind of suck. Sounded like a good event. But yeah, there's a fair amount of times when, especially with the game-specific stuff, it's, just not applicable for anything. Usually these guys will cause something. Yeah, sometimes not. Reinforcements changing. Maybe, maybe not. There may be no more reinforcements remaining. Anyway. So 6:30 is completely done. Not much done. The French basically got to fire some artillery, and it's not just plinking because they've got heavy artillery. So they were firing on a 2 from here and here on the 3 table. This is unanswerable because I chose to put all the Austrians in no order. You could say, well, that's a dumb idea. Maybe. Of course, my return fire wouldn't be very good anyway, which was one of the reasons I did it. And I wanted to be up at the edge of the village because, well, I'm village people. No. Because it just feels like you want to be there. You don't want to have to fight your way out of the village if the French position themselves right next to you or whatever. That would be foolish to me, right? It just doesn't fit my observations of what should happen. However, I'm in, my jumping off point is right up against some pretty hefty French firepower. And my only answer to that would be an emergency withdrawal, which clearly doesn't work. And, my hope is to get the assault going at some point. But I've got a couple of D5s so far, which, might not happen today. Still full daylight. We go down to 10 hex visibility on the next turn. Don't know how much I'm going to be playing. It's a weird sort of situation because sometimes I come up here because I feel like I have to play the video game thing on that other account. Like that was the case earlier today. And I play some of this, so it gives a boost. Here I came up here to play, but I got to tell you the truth, with my normal habits, with this system and war games and whatnot in general, I've been wandering away after a turn. And here, I'm right up here with it, That may make it a little bit more likely that... but I actually came up here to play this and turned the video game on because I'm like, well, I should be doing both. But now instead of just going and watching, YouTube, I'm going to play more of the video game and probably get motivated to do more of this, even though I totally don't feel like it right this moment. Why I don't feel like it right this moment and why I wander away and everything. Right now, the game's pretty damn easy to play. But once things start moving, once they start attacking again, it's going to be bad. And I know that. It's not that it's going to be a bad game or whatever. It's just, it's going to be a lot more effort. So I find it, harder to convince myself because there's the attacks could start up. The French turn was easy to do. I knew it would be. There's nothing going on right now. Just a few fires. It's just a matter of like not wanting to face a lot of decisions, a lot of effort and whatnot. And I don't really understand, but I've kind of had that all along where I like play a big turn or whatever and I wander away. With something like Terrible Swift Sword, where they don't have the orders and whatnot, the weight of the turn and what it's going to be. That may make it harder to start one, though. Like I found myself unwilling to play turns of games where I know it's going to be a big turn every turn. And the same thing happens once the orders trigger. It's going to be a big turn, and you're like, well, am I willing to commit to? This isn't a huge game, but the battles in this, each individual close combat, is extensive and complex enough to figure out that it's like, after doing one or two